But I'm glad I did. I remember the first time that I saw illustrated the idea that I descended from an ape-like ancestor. I was in elementary school and I opened a book. Back then it was in the 70s. It was not the 1870s. Time Life books, that's what we learned, real science from Time Life books. So I opened up the Time Life book and there it was in full color, an artist's illustration of an ape-like creature with human eyes. And I thought, this is it. These scientists have found these fossils, and they're telling me that these fossils show that I evolved from an ape-like creature. It's right here. Here's the picture. Now, it wasn't until many years later that a friend challenged me to reinvestigate what I had thought I learned. And indeed, I found out that the fossils don't preserve the original look in the eyes. They only have preserved the bones and some tiny little proteins that we'll talk about tonight. Do you get what I'm saying? The eyes were made up by people who already were convinced before they even looked at the fossils that humans evolved from apes. But nonetheless, I grew up believing this because it's all I had ever been taught. When I eventually read the Bible, it said a totally different story, didn't it? It said, you were made in the image of God. Image of God? I thought I was in the image of apes. I thought I evolved from apes. One of these stories is right, and one is wrong. And that's my bottom line today, is to basically persuade you that you do not have apes in your ancestry. You have Adam's blood flowing through your veins. Now, here's how I'm going to try to persuade you. It's through the details of design that we notice in the human reproductive system, especially the 3 gauntlets that sperm cells have to endure in order to make a baby, in order to make the next generation. You can't get the next generation unless you have all these design specifications all in the right place, working at the right time, in the right way, for Mr. Soldier Sperm to make it all the way to fertilize the egg. So we're talking about human reproduction today for the next few minutes, and I'll try not to use the V word, okay? I'll try not to use the P word, but if I do, you and I will understand what we're talking about. Only Mr. Ashcraft will be embarrassed, so that'll be all right. Do you know the word gauntlet? One of the definitions is glove. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about these soldiers. This is an old picture from the Navy, and this soldier, this naval Navy guy, is running through a gauntlet, which is where the other naval compadres, they basically beat him with towels and slap him as he runs through, and it's just a wonderful human tradition of violence and brutality. And it gives us kind of an analogy to what sperm have to go through. Are you ready to learn about the 3 gauntlets? Okay, about a third of you are ready to learn. The rest of you, get ready. Gauntlet number 1 is coming up. But here's the issue, is can we get these design requirements that we're going to see in these 3 gauntlets, as they relate to sperm, can we obtain these designs through natural, bit-by-bit process? In other words, can you use like a natural process like wind? Can wind take this paper and fold it into a paper airplane? Bit by bit, one fold at a time, and then the next fold. Can wind do that? Can wind, if you add more wind to the folded paper airplane, can wind or other natural processes transform that paper airplane into something more complicated like a hang glider or like an F-20, what are the latest? F-20 something, the Raptor, the new jet. Bit by bit, it turns out that every time we see these complicated systems coming into being, it's always by what? All at once, design, somebody doing it with their hand. So that's what the scripture teaches. It says that you were made by God, and God did it, not natural processes. So that's what's at stake. And I'll tell you, when I made that switch, that transformation from oh, I just descended from apes through bit-by-bit natural processes, to now I became convinced after re-examining the evidence, man, I was made by God. You realize how changed my life became? I was made by God. That means He loves me. That means He's got a purpose for me. That means I have a meaning in this life. Everything for me changed. And I began to know Him in a way that I was supposed to, that I was designed and built to know Him. That's ultimately what I want you to be able to do, is to trust in His Word so that you can know Him better. That's the bottom line. And science leads us in that direction. The science of human reproduction. So, the first gauntlet is His body, and so my first picture is this amazing photograph, actual photo of sperm cells, and they're right here next to an egg cell. And this is the beginnings of the process of the actual process of fertilization. So these are our two primary cellular characters. On the left is which one? Everybody say sperm. You're going to say stuff, so just get used to it. In fact, this sperm is a cell, a single cell, and you notice that this cell is totally different. They're both cells. And this is an egg cell surrounded by lots of little supportive cells. So we call this entire structure a follicle. There's the follicle, and you can even see some specific parts, like this long whip-like extension of the cell. We call that a flagellum, and it's like an outboard motor. It's like a paddle. Okay, and then we have this thing called an acrosome. Go ahead and say that, because we're going to return to that. It's going to become important. And then you see these batteries or banks of mitochondria. Who's heard of mitochondria? You know, you all have the powerhouse. So you've got lots of powerhouses. What are they doing? They're powering that outboard motor, because Mr. Sperm has got a long journey, and he's going to need to go a long way. So these are our characters. Okay, the first gauntlet is, how do you get this thing built? It's called the process of building a sperm, is spermatogenesis, which means sperm beginnings. And that is what a sperm cell looks like at the beginning of the beginnings. And then through various amazing processes, this pre-sperm cell begins to grow a flagellum right there. And in fact, you can't get that flagellum to start to grow unless you have a very high concentration of a hormone, my favorite hormone in the world, testosterone. That's what makes it all go around. I'm getting excited. It's great. Testosterone. You've got to concentrate testosterone in order to get this to transform into a lean, mean, swimming machine. Woo! And it all happens in the testis. And if you were to look and examine inside this, you would see a seminiferous tubule. Say that. Okay, so you look at that, you look at the cross-section, and here's an actual photo, microscope, amazing tool, and it shows the cross-section. It's a cutaway looking into the end of here's the outline of the tubule, and you can see these tiny little filaments. These are flagella, for these tiny little sperm cells that are in the inside, and they can swim. They can swim up and down this tubule. Well, what are these cells? Lots and lots of cells. Many of these, like this one, is a pre-sperm cell, and as it develops into a lean, mean swimming machine, it migrates from the outer edge of the seminiferous tubule to the inner liquid center. None of this will happen if you don't have the seminiferous tubules. And you can't get seminiferous tubules without a substance called anti-Mullerian substance. Well, have you heard of that one? You're going to hear some things that you haven't heard, and that's good. Anti-Mullerian substance is a hormone. By the way, when I say the word hormone and I ask you what hormone means, just go ahead and tell me that it's a chemical messenger. Class, what's a hormone? Okay, thank you, front 7 rows. And one lady in the back. Appreciate it. So the anti-Mullerian substance, you've got to secrete that so that these little tubes will form seminiferous tubules instead of a womb. You see? And when you're a little baby, the default position is for these structures to develop into a womb. That's the girl's reproductive system. So to get the boy's reproductive system in place, you've got to have anti-Mullerian substance. Got to have it, okay? Or you don't get this, and if you don't have this, you're not going to be making spermatogenesis happen. So there's your first design, is anti-Mullerian substance. In fact, there's more. There's lots more. And we have to go to the base of the brain to see some of this, some more of this. To this little structure called the hypothalamus. Say that, back row. I know. I got to get the back row to talk because you guys have to leave early. So you're going to the track meet, right? Some of you track meet? So stay with me until you have to go. Hypothalamus is this little extension of the thalamus underneath it, and it actually does an amazing thing. It communicates between your brain and your chemical message system, your hormones. And it secretes a hormone that's called gonadotropin-releasing hormone. Simple. Science is easy, right? So, gonadotropin-releasing hormone, when it reaches the pituitary gland, it tells the pituitary gland, which is also at the base of the brain. By the way, I'm going to get a little complicated here, and if you don't get it, that's fine. I will summarize the main point at the end. So, feel safe, right? It's going to trigger the pituitary gland to release a follicle-stimulating hormone, and then that gets released into your bloodstream, and when that FSH reaches the testis and the seminiferous tubules, it tells these special cells called nurse cells to begin producing androgen-binding hormone, which is a hormone that's like a testosterone net. It's like testosterone floating by, androgen-binding hormone binds it and holds it there. Why would you want to bind testosterone and hold it in the seminiferous tubules? Because that's the only way you can make the sperm. Flagellum. It's got to have extra testosterone. So the testosterone is concentrated in these tubules. So that's going on, and you also have the luteinizing hormone produced by pituitary, and that reaches other cells inside the seminiferous tubules, and it tells them to make more testosterone, so that the end result is testosterone concentrate. And you need that. You got to have that, or you will not get the flagellum. And if you don't have the outboard motor, your sperm ain't swimming. And if your sperm ain't swimming, you are not going to make the next generation. And so everyone goes extinct. So without GRH, FSH, LH, testosterone, ABH, without all of these in place, all at the same time, you go extinct. So, praise the Lord. He's put all these things together. And they go into these nurse cells. And you can see this amazing photo of here's the sperm cells mature, and they can actually power themselves now. They've got the outboard motor all in place. And nurse cells like this one are helping to mature these sperm cells with testosterone concentrate. Now, who's heard of the? There's one more gauntlet, one more design aspect in the gauntlet of the male body that we have to overcome. These sperm have to overcome, and that is this. You've heard of the immune system, right? Okay, your immune system attacks invader cells, cells that have different DNA than your own body cells. Question: do sperm cells have different DNA or the same DNA as your own body cell? Different. It's different because it's going to become part of a whole new person. And that whole new person is going to have his or her own unique set of DNA. That's what makes, part of what makes that person unique. Unique design and unique creation. Like each of us are. So, if you don't have something in place, some design in place, then the male's body is going to attack all of these sperm cells. Because what? The male's body says, these are all invaders. We must get rid of these. Good thing we have a design in place, and it's called the blood-testis barrier. It's like the blood-brain barrier, but it's somewhere else. It's in the testis. So there it is there. That's the blood-testis barrier. And what it does is it selectively keeps out the immune system's attack cells. Your immune system's attack cells don't attack your own sperm. If they did, you'd go sterile. And there are people with diseases that compromise the blood-testis barrier, and so these guys are sterile, and they're not able to have children. And that's part of what? The fallen world because of sin and the broken creation that we have to live in. But if you got everything working, then you've got this amazing blood-testis barrier, and it's right here. You can see this is, again, a cross-section of the seminiferous tubule. Are you with me? And this is a great cut because here is a capillary blood vessel. And what are these cells, guys? Yeah, red blood cells. And then, so you can see that the rest of the body's fluids, including red blood cells, are stuck on the outside, and so that they, and what else is out here? The attack cells of the immune system. They're stuck out here. They can't get in to attack the sperm. Whew! The sperm have dodged all the bullets. They've survived the gauntlet of his body. So my question, if you have testosterone, concentrate, all the hormones required for that, if you have your anti-Mullerian substance, if you have the blood-testis barrier, let's say you don't have the blood-testis barrier, but you've got all the others in place. Can you then, in a couple generations later, can you add the blood-testis barrier? So you can bit, by natural processes, transform this creature into a human? Everybody say no. No! You've got to have all of these in place at the same time. Every single one. So, I'm saying, how else could this possibly have happened except by creation? Only an ingenious designer could have put all these design pieces in place in order for the next generation to happen regularly. And of course, this is what we'd expect if we just believed what we read, for example, in John 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. All things were made by Him. Without Him was made nothing that was made. And etc. Well, let's go to the second gauntlet. Gauntlet numero dos. We've talked about your body, guys. Now the sperm has to endure her body. And she's going to present a whole new set of gauntlets for our soldiering sperm. Well, here's the womb. And the womb has uterus and ovary. And this particular diagram labels this important tube the uterine tube. And the ovary is a little, you know how spermatogenesis occurs in the seminiferous tubules? Well, oogenesis occurs in the ovary. And it's about the size of a walnut, and it's white colored. I'll show you one. And it's very courteous because every month or so, a female human will secrete one egg and from one side. And then the next month, the egg will come from the other ovary, the left, and then the right, and then the left, month to month. So they don't cut in line. They take turns. And when that follicle, that mature egg, is produced, it actually migrates to the outer edge of the ovary. And this little guy is like a catcher's mitt with these finger-like extensions called fimbriae. And then this catcher's mitt reaches around, grabs the ovary at just the right time of the month, and it catches that mature egg. And then the mature egg starts to migrate down here. How does it do that? Well, contractions of little smooth muscle cells will squeeze that follicle down toward the uterus. And then the sperm is going to try to make its way up toward the egg. The fertilization happens along here, and then the fertilized egg can get implanted on the inside tissue that's inside the uterus. And that whole implantation process is a whole nother talk that we're not going to give. That's another set of miracles and design specifications that are required to make the next generation. But that's the big picture. Are you with me? 3 people. Appreciate that. So here it is again. Here's the mature follicle, and these fimbriae catch it, and here comes the follicle down the uterine tube. So a friend of mine had a procedure done. She had a growth that had to be removed, and so the doctor, has to reach in. He did abdominal surgery, and you can see the outside of her womb, and you can see her ovary. It flashes in the picture. It's a white it's a white, smooth organ, the ovary. Let's see if this thing works here. All right, you like internal anatomy, right? So here it comes. He's got these special pinchers that go into her body, and there's the ovary, see it? And there's the oviduct there. And that's the abdominal wall. Her organs are back behind that. And this whole thing is the uterus. And that's fat cells. Awesome, isn't it? We like that. That's real biology. All right, so here's the second gauntlet. Every day in the womb, the outside of the womb is acidic. It's acid. So that acid will eat through a sperm and kill it. So your sperm is toast. There's also a thick mucus plug preventing the sperm from entering the womb. So, sorry sperm, no luck this time. There's also a flushing contraction. So, imagine at the top of this uterus, there's a like a squeezing motion. Like, have you ever taken a rubber tube and like a hose and like pinched it and squeezed it out like that? So there's a flow going, outward flow. So unless the sperm has some special design requirement, that outward flow is going to wash him out of the way, and so there goes all your hopes of ever getting fertilization to take place. And if you survive all that, she has her own set of immune cells. Her immune system will attack the sperm as what? Invading cells. How in the world are we ever going to get the next generation? We're in a real pickle. If we have to add step by step these design requirements, we'll just be dead. But fortunately, we have all at once, all at the same time, we have solutions, and God has supplied these solutions. Number one, the sperm don't come alone. They come along with special fluid called seminal fluid, and that has a substance in it that neutralizes acid. Whew! So these poor soldiers, a lot of them actually do encounter the acid, and they burn up. But some of these soldiering sperm happen to be in little places and pockets where they're surrounded by enough of this neutralizing substance that the acid doesn't eat them. But they're looking to the left, and they're looking to the right, and their buddies are getting burned up by acid, and they're saying, that's okay, because I've got a mission. I got to keep going. So they hit the mucus plug, and they say, what am I going to do now? And it turns out that the seminal fluid also has special chemicals that make little tiny holes in the plug, in the wall here, this wall. And so that means that the sperm can actually find its way through the tiny holes in that wall, and then it can finally reach the interior of the womb. And these flushing contractions do what? Check this out. There are special hormones in the seminal fluid, again, that communicate with the tissue inside her body. So guys, this is something made in your body, and the only purpose for it is to do an action in her body, the wife's body. And so these rhythmic contractions stop going down, and they start going up. They reverse direction. This is amazing. It knows exactly what to do, because God placed that knowledge into it. It didn't come bit by bit from natural processes. It came all at once from an all-knowing God. And then the local suppression of the immune system occurs because, again, the seminal fluid has substances in it that say, hey, you can kill all the germs elsewhere, but for right now, don't kill any cells that are in here. And there's other systems that she has in place that we don't have time to talk about that interact dynamically to make sure that she does not get an infection while she has a local suppression of her immune system. By local, I mean just right here. Isn't this great? This is super. So we are ready to go, guys. We have solutions to the acid, to the flush, to the sweep. I didn't even talk about that one with the flagella. I don't have time. The cilia sweep one way. Anyway, we'll save that for another lesson. We have a solution to penetrate the wall. We have a solution to neutralize the attack cells. Oh, and I need to talk about this one, starvation. You see, the sperm cell doesn't even have enough sugar, energy, to make its whole journey. It can get about halfway. So what happens? Her body, in her womb, makes sugar that the sperm can absorb and digest. So the sperm cell burns energy that it acquires from her body. And without that energy, it would never reach its destination. Cool. All this stuff is all in place all at once. God must have put it there. And of course, we would know that if we read Romans 1, for since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, I like how smart he is, are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, like human reproduction system. So we can be confident through looking at these two gauntlets, his body and her body, remind us that all the design requirements that are perfectly met remind us that God did this. And I came from Adam, not from apes. And it's for sure. Science supports it. Science supports what this verse says right here. Science supports all the Bible. Good science, observable science. Not imaginative drawings of human eyeballs in ape skulls, things that never existed. Let's look at things that do exist, and let's look at the third gauntlet. What's the third gauntlet? Have we looked at the third gauntlet yet? Do you want some more biology, or should I skip this part? Oh, Mr. Bashcraft. Where's the love of learning? I told you I would say it, so I've got to say it. This acrosome. This is pretty cool, actually. Here's the acrosome. And the acrosome is it's like a bag of enzymes that digest tissue. So what does that mean? Imagine this. Nanobots that eat flesh. Flesh-eating nanobots. And I know you know what a nanobot is because it's in the opening song of Phineas and Ferb. Da-na-na nanobots. Da-na-na-na-na. Okay. So, flesh-eating nanobots inside here. Why do you need flesh-eating nanobots? Well, you need them, but you need them at a certain time. You need them to penetrate the egg. Egg fortress is going to be our third gauntlet. Well, how are you going to keep those flesh-eating nanobots right there until it's time? Here's how. You put a plastic bag around them so that nothing can get through it, except for digestive enzymes in her womb that eat through the plastic bag. Of course, it's not plastic, but there is an envelope, you can see, that surrounds the acrosome. And it's special chemicals in her womb, in her body. The only purpose of those chemicals is to activate the sperm. That's what they're for. Put there by God, perfectly designed, and they're going to chew away at that plastic bag, and at just the right time, after it has swum all the way up into the womb, and right about the time it meets the egg, the acrosome will divulge its contents. So let me just get you a quote from an anatomy textbook. And it says this: as sperm swim through the cervical mucus, that's the wall, the uterus, and the uterine tubes, they undergo a gradual capacitation. That means gradually they're getting ready to deliver their DNA to the egg. And it takes a few hours of her chemicals to digest the plastic bag. This is a pretty elaborate mechanism, but consider the alternative. If you don't have this protection around the acrosome, all these flesh-eating nanobots will be released inside his body while they're still inside the seminiferous tubules. Guys, that would be bad. Ouch. The girls are not even. You get what I'm saying? If the acrosome, the flesh-eating nanobots, started eating your flesh, you would be like this all day long. It doesn't do that. It's in place. It's in place so that her body capacitates the sperm of her husband. So here's the third gauntlet. It's egg fortress. So we've gone through all these things. He's seen his buddies dying left and right, getting caught in the nets. Immune system attacks some of them, but there's the few soldiering on, and they finally get to Egg Fortress. Dun, 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 dun. And when they get there, music actually happens. Here's what actually happens. Is there's special layers that surround this follicle. And here's one of these layers. This calls it a jelly coat. We'll just go with that since that's what the label says. There's other more technical terms for it. How are you going to get through the jelly coat of the egg? Because you've got to deliver this DNA into this cell. And so how are you going to get there? Well, you've got to digest this jelly coat with flesh-eating nanobots. Good thing we have some of those on hand. So this has been thinned out, and the sperm is now capacitated, so it releases its flesh-eating nanobots, and they start digging a tunnel. And then the sperm reaches in. Then it's still got a problem because it has to actually get closer. And so it has these little actin filaments, which are like little proteins that slide against one another like this, and they contract. So they can actually latch onto the inner membrane of the egg fortress, and then sort of ratchet that sperm's head right on in there. Well, good thing it's got the latching mechanism and the contracting mechanism. All that's in place. Whew, solve that dilemma. Now, when we get here, we have a problem because this won't latch onto the inner membrane unless the inner membrane recognizes it. In other words, there's literally a latch. It's like a hook. Okay? And the sperm sends out its hook, and in the egg there's another hook, but the hooks are specifically shaped for each species. So, if a chimpanzee sperm reaches this point, if a human egg, let's say we're doing an in vitro fertilization experiment, all right, and then the sperm, guess what? The chimpanzee latch will not connect with the human the human's latch. So these proteins are very specific. And so that's part of what keeps people, and chimps, and dogs, and that's what we see. Dogs make more dogs, people make more people, chimps make more chimps. That's what we've always seen, and that's of course what we see in Genesis 10, right? And God made these creatures to reproduce after their own kinds, not between kinds like I was taught, but within kinds, the human kind. So we have just the right latching mechanism. It pulls this in, and then what happens? Something else happens. This begins to separate. Once this separates, you have an instant activation of a moat of fluid that surrounds the castle. It's like when the first sperm gets in, it flips a switch, and water fills the moat around the castle, 360 around this egg. And what does that mean? That means all the other sperm get stuck and they can't get through the moat. But that's not all. The castle has one more defense. It's an electric defense. There's actually an electronic pulse that surges around the entire egg as soon as the first sperm reaches its destination. And that pulse actually zaps sperm. You can read about it in your anatomy books, but for now, just remember, you've got a lot of pieces in place for this sperm, and I mean these pieces are specifically, precisely, and exactly, and lovingly designed so that we can have the next generation. What would it be like if we had tactics that overcome the guards of the cell, the moat around this egg cell, the jelly wall, the competitors, you got to outswim those guys, the opening door with the protein that has to connect, and then the shock zap. You've got all these tactics in place to overcome all these problems, these gauntlets. Let's say you have all of it, but you don't have your shock defense. Well, what's going to happen? You get shocked. You reach all this way, and then you just get zapped. There's specific pieces in place to keep this from killing the sperm, And boy, the specificity with which this all occurs is mind-boggling to me and convinces me beyond the shadow of all doubt that I and you were definitely made in the image of Adam and Eve, who were made in the image of God, not in the image of apes at all. And there's more details. I'm going to skip through this. But just remember that the baby does do all these things within the mother's body. It's the baby who secretes, the developing baby in her womb secretes all these hormones to make sure that the baby itself is ready to be born. And then we have a new little baby, so precious and cute. All these things put in place by God because of his loving kindness. Oh, you want to see this, how a face forms in the womb? Scientists just figured this one out. Just within a few weeks of fertilization, the developing embryo comes together in this fashion. So if you look closely, you can start to see the beginnings of a baby face. So you see, as the baby develops, every part of that process occurs in a symphony, hey, stop it. In just the right order. So are these all at once? Yes. Bit by bit, ain't no way. You've got to have all these pieces, all the solutions to all these dilemmas, and all three gauntlets in place all at the same time. So it's an all-at-once deal. And I saw this advertisement for the UT Dallas Mechanical Engineering School, and I thought, that is so appropriate. Cool stuff doesn't just make itself, someone has to design it. And I wish that the mechanical engineering department would talk to the biology department, because the biologists say, cool stuff did make itself, natural processes did it, blah, blah, blah. No way. Natural processes cannot make cool stuff. God can. God did. He told us in his word that he did. And you can trust this Bible. You can trust it. Science supports it. And you can remember, whenever you go to college, guys, your professors are going to say, and this, well, if you go to secular college, you're going to get this teaching, right? You came from an ape-like ancestor, and here is the fossil, and blah, blah, blah. And I want you, when that happens, I want you to remember this day. Remember this moment. Remember this three gauntlets. And just think to yourself, there's no way that natural processes can design solutions to so many gauntlets, to so many problems. But all the solutions are in place so that we can actually reproduce and make more men and women, to make new generations of people who will know and love the Lord, hopefully. Well, have you been edified? A little bit? I don't have any products with me today, but we do at the Institute for Creation Research we produce and highly recommend certain of our products. I think every Christian family, for example, should have this book, Guide to Creation Basics. You can get it on an ebook, so put it on your smartphone. Just go to icr.org and download it, however the smartphone works. And we also have this. I don't really want you to sign up for it. It's a free, totally free, no strings attached magazine. It comes how often, Mr. Ashcraft? Every month for free, right? And it's a family-oriented magazine. There's one technical article in it. There's a 7th grade article in it that I write every month. And then there's an article for Mom and Dad. And I think every Christian household should be receiving this and reading it, because this is the sort of, this builds up your faith. This builds up your worldview, because it shows that science supports the Bible in any number of ways. So we have contributing articles from all of our experts. We have Dr. Tim Clary, the geologist. We have Dr. Jake Hebert. He's an atmospheric physicist, and he's an expert on the Ice Age. And we have astrophysicist Dr. Jason Lyle, and several other guys they contribute. And I read these articles every month that comes in the mail, and I read them, and I'm thankful for it, and I have been for 20 years, because every time I learn, I read, and I learn more, and I get encouraged knowing that I'm on the right track. I'm on the right path, believing the Bible. Science supports the Bible. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we thank you that you have designed us, and you've even placed in us these elaborate reminders that you did it. And there's no mistaking it. This is your handiwork within our bodies. So we really appreciate you for doing it this way. I pray, Father, that my students here today would seek you, would trust your word, believe you, and believe your word, and get to know you more every day. We thank you for all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. We have 6 or 7 minutes, and I thought we'd use just a few of these minutes before you go to lunch for a little question and answer time. So I've given you lots of information, but I've tried to build it around a theme so that you can sort of make sense of it. But are there any questions? And yes, there are bad questions. Are there any questions that you might want to ask? And I'll do my best. Yes. Yeah, what about twins? How does that happen? Okay. The question was, how do twins happen? Is that close enough? Well, I remember in 1996, we took my wife to the doctor, and what do you do when you're pregnant? You get a sonogram. It was our first sonogram. And it's this little handheld doohickey, and they expose the mommy's belly, and then they put this jelly on her belly, and then they put the doohickey on the jelly, and then they turn on the machine, and it sends out these sound waves that it then records, and you get an image of what's inside the womb. And I remember I was looking at the monitor, and my wife is on the table, and the nurse has got the sonogram monitor there, and she put it on, and boom, you could instantly see in the monitor a little baby. And I was like, awesome! We have a healthy little girl. I see her right there. Head down, feet up, everything's just right. And then the nurse went, and I saw a baby. Head up, feet down, and I thought, we have two. What are we going to do? So God blessed us with double. So how's that happen? And by the way, they are 17 and in whatever grade 17-year-olds are in. They're in that grade. And so what happens is you have an egg, and it happens several ways, but the most common way is for that egg to be fertilized. And then the egg, after fertilization, it becomes a zygote, and that's the name for it. The zygote undergoes its first division. Now you have two cells where there were in the same space where there was one cell. Well, sometimes, for some reason, I'm not sure why exactly, but this isn't the most common way. This is how you make identical twins. Fertilization happens first, and then the egg divides, and then somehow they split. So now you've got this one implants in the womb, this one implants somewhere else in the womb, in the inner lining of the uterus, and then they both develop and grow at the same time in the womb. And so then they have the same DNA. And so you get identical twins that way. You can also have two eggs fertilized at the same time. So maybe the ovaries are discourteous for 1 month, and you have two eggs, and they both get fertilized. So separately, so you have a separate DNA in the egg, fertilized by a separate sperm as this other one. You have two unique, totally DNA unique individuals, and they separately implant in the womb. Or you could have two eggs from the same ovary, and then they implant with two separate sperm. Yeah, twins, and then the way you get octuplets is by taking strange drugs. Yes, sir. What about conjoined twins? I don't know how they develop. I know that obviously they're not developing properly, and somehow they develop, but they never separate early on. So then they continue to develop in the womb. Well, those are difficult situations, aren't they? Yep. Have you guys read the story of Dr. Ben Carson? Now he's an expert on surgically separating conjoined twin babies. And he's, of course, a Christian. And he wants those people to be able to grow up and have as normal a life as possible, which is great. So, sorry, I don't know much about conjoined twins. Anything else that I cannot answer properly? This is your chance to ask dinosaur questions. I know more about dinosaurs than... Yeah. Oh, there might be. I wouldn't put it past, especially evolutionary geneticists, or people who are really already believe that we share ancestry with apes, like they're 100% committed to that belief, and so their goal would be they might have any nefarious goal, but maybe their goal would be to illustrate what they already believe, and so they might want to use their genetic engineering prowess there's already some work being done in the UK to mix animal and human DNA to make certain cell lines for quote-unquote research. I think there's something going on underneath motivation-wise, because you can do all the research that you need to do with the cell lines that we already have in labs. You can run any experiment that you need to run. You don't need to mix human and animal DNA, but they're doing it. Some labs are doing it in the UK. Yep. The answer is it's possible. I wouldn't know how to go about starting to do that, but smart people other than me might know how. Yep. Now, what would happen though? You'd have 23 human chromosomes in the egg, and then you'd have 24 chimp chromosomes. So you've got a chromosome hanging out there with no match. So what happens when these chromosomes merge in the zygote is they get together. 1 with 1, 2 with 2, all the way to 23. So the 24th one would be hanging out. And when you have a chromosome mismatch within kind, like within humankind, sometimes number whatever doesn't link properly with its corresponding chromosome in the female, in the egg, then you can end up with some severe diseases. A lot of times, chromosome mismatching causes the pregnancy to not go all the way through. And so I imagine that I imagine there'd be difficulties even if you could solve the link problem. There's other problems that you'd have to solve as an engineer. There's lots of problems you'd have to solve to get that to work. Maybe someone will one day. That will be a creepy day. I hope that you have to deal with that, and my generation will be out of this picture. Just kidding. Yes, ma'am. Last question. Thank you. I do have a favorite dinosaur. Or do I? I'll tell you what. I have a favorite dinosaur type, and that is the sauropod dinosaur. So I'll be talking about that tonight, about the design in the sauropod dinosaurs. Those are the ones with the forelegs and the long necks, long tail. They've got all kinds of cool design features, and if they didn't have all in place at the same time, they'd be dead on arrival. What a joy it has been to be with you. Thanks for giving me your attention. Appreciate it.